This is beautiful, right? I already know your answer, it's obviously yes, unless you hate puppies and kittens. It's so vibrant, so breathtaking. To me, it's kinda awe-inspiring. Something about it exudes this sense of optimism that fills me with this strange feeling of confidence and hope. I feel as though this was intentional, at least to some degree. This is Collision Chaos Good Future from Sonic CD. The Good Future stages in this game, I feel, try to convey this feeling of optimism, showing the best case scenario of a future where nature can exist in harmony with technology. Looking at this stage and its visuals, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Maybe it's how vibrant the stage is. Maybe it's all the objects, like these neon signs flashing constantly. Maybe it's these strange potted plants that look weird, but you're immediately able to tell what their purpose is. Could be anything, really. There's so many different parts to this stage and its visuals that I feel can occupy a plethora of different emotions and feelings in one's heart, and ultimately none of it would be possible without Surrealism. Surrealism is the perfect way to define the visuals of not just Sonic CD, but every classic Sonic game. I feel like it's a big part of what defined those games. Its visuals stood out at the time they released, and honestly even more so now as the gaming industry keeps shifting farther and farther away from a more stylized approach to art styles and closer to realism. This effect can also be felt with the Sonic franchise. As the series grows older and older, the amount of surrealism in the franchise has lowered dramatically, and I think that's genuinely tragic. Real quick, if you liked the video, consider subscribing as it helps me out a ton. Also, consider joining my Patreon for early access to videos, link in the description. Let's get back to it. So, what is surrealism? Well, I find reading off a one-to-one description is really pointless, so instead, I'm going to give some examples and somewhat of my own explanation. I find surrealism in Sonic games at its core to be taking something that exists or could exist in the real world and exaggerating it. It's taking something realistic and molding it into something that really isn't. Yet, it always retains the core of that realistic thing, so there isn't much of you seeing something and not knowing what it is. There's usually a real-life counterpart to compare it to, so it never feels like something pointless or random. Take the potted plant thing I mentioned earlier. What is this? We've got a healthy, growing plant on top of this machine, which seems to be holding it with potentially several support beams for the thing, atop a small bump of dirt and grass. Now, while this thing doesn't exist in real life, it's easy to understand its purpose. CD's Good Futures are all about the coexistence of nature and technology. Technology exists to keep nature thriving, more so than it did before. Because of this, we can make the assumption that whatever this machine is, its purpose is to help that plant grow or survive in some way. What way is that? We don't know. And I think that's how it should be. I feel as though it's meant to replicate a feeling more so than something concrete. We don't know 100% what this is, but we can connect the dots to assume generally what its purpose is. The best way I could describe the surrealism in Collision Chaos and classic games as a whole is unorthodox yet coherent. While these things may seem random at first, there's usually always a meaning to them. They're supposed to be something. They aren't there just for the sake of being there, they serve a purpose. And whether that purpose is easily identifiable or not usually doesn't matter. As long as you're able to look at something and make a general guess on what it could be or what its purpose is, I feel like it's done its job. Things may not make total sense once you try to analyze them through a realistic lens, but that's because you're not supposed to. I feel as though using your imagination is part of its intended purpose. It's all very abstract, like certain pieces of art. Sometimes the emotions they invoke are more important than understanding the meaning behind them. Let's dial things back a bit to Sonic 1. Green Hill. Yes, I know it's been milked to death, but I don't think that should detract from the beauty and quality the original rendition of the stage holds. While I'm sure you aren't looking at the stage today with wonder and awe because of how much it's been reused, it's quite a marvelous looking level that, you guessed it, has surrealism as the forefront of its identity. While not nearly as abstract as what CD would try, this is still undoubtedly an abstract stage. It goes back to that initial point I said about surrealism. It's about taking something that does or could exist in real life and exaggerating it to the point of being almost unrealistic. Yet the core of the idea still stays, meaning you can draw parallels between it and real life. Green Hill is clearly based on grassy fields and mountains. It's an extremely easy connection to make. However, despite this, no place in the world looks like this. You will not find anything close to this in the real world. You clearly know what its inspirations are, yet when you look at them, they're so dissimilar. Something as simple as that checkerboard pattern plastered on the dirt. They turned something as simple as dirt and turned it into this interesting visual. Things like flowers seem to be almost dancing as the petals are constantly rotating. The grass itself even has this simple pattern of alternating shades of green. There's so much to dissect here. Something people often overlook is these strange tikis that occupy the stage. They're scattered throughout each act and are never elaborated on. It's the only sign of human interaction in the place, and it's never once brought up in the series as far as I'm aware. Do people live here? Did people used to live here? It can get your imagination running, and I feel like when it gets you thinking, it succeeded. There's something about these visuals that just make it easy to get lost in. Even when we move over to Sonic 2, the surrealism persists with everything I've said prior applying up to here. I think my two favorites here have to be Aquatic Ruin and Mystic Cave. Aquatic Ruin's visuals have always stuck in my mind. There's just something about them that's so mystical, for lack of a better word. There isn't any human life remaining here, only the structures they presumably created are what's left. I love all the foliage throughout the stage. It's very grassy, but there's so much overgrowth, both under the water and outside, where it's so high up it reaches like the actual ceiling of the level. It really sells the whole place that this idea is abandoned, but despite this, it still retains that vibrancy. The place is abandoned, the people that used to be here have clearly either died out or moved away, yet there's still this unshaking feeling of optimism. And this may just be me, but even in the more bleaker stages, I can't help but feel optimistic. And I think that's the point. It fits in line with Sonic as a character as well, so I don't think it'd be too much of a stretch to say that. Now, I've said previously that Surrealism works largely because of the fact that despite being unorthodox, everything is still coherent. Knuckles Chaotix sort of throws this out the window. And I can't say that I necessarily dislike it, but I do think it kind of loses a part of what made the environments of the other classic games so interesting. While I never say these games are ugly, I do think they're very pretty. They lack the cohesion and intent that something like CD had. I think there is a thing as too abstract when it comes to Sonic levels, and I think CD balances a fine line of being relatable enough while still being very abstract. Chaotix, again, is still very pretty, but I can't find myself getting immersed in these worlds or becoming intrigued with them as I can the other classics. I feel each level of Sonic 1, 2, 3, and CD have their own stories to tell, but I just can't see that with Chaotix. Now, with all this said, I don't think that modern games look bad necessarily. Well, most of them at least. However, there's undoubtedly something with these games' visuals that lack that identity they once had. Things are a bit tamer now, for lack of a better term, and while again, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, stages like Rooftop Run, Jungle Joyride, and plenty of others, despite their more realistic approach, are still stunning in their own right. And there certainly is a baseline surrealist aspect that all of these stages have. Floating rails, roads that are actually loops, that is surreal and there's no denying it. And things like this have persisted throughout each of these games. However, comparing most classic stages to modern ones, you can really tell that something changed. Modern Sonic stages are surreal in the way that modern Mario stages are surreal. Are you really going to define Mario's visual identity as surrealism? I don't think you are. While it's truly impossible for Sonic to be 100% not surreal, it's no argument that Sonic levels in 3D are way less abstract than that of the 2D titles. Things simply make a lot more sense in these levels. City Escape, for example. Sure, it's a nice stage with the contrast between Sonic and the realistic streets of San Francisco are pretty cool. Where's the surrealism here, though? I mean, obviously this place could never exist in real life. There is this baseline surrealism that exists, like I said prior. You have to do that for level design to work. But in terms of the visuals, where's the surrealism? There really isn't any. And while again, realistic stages can look nice, the surrealist approach of the classics will always be better and more interesting to me. Sonic is now the most surreal part of these stages, and while I do think it provides a neat contrast like I said before, I'd rather take that contrast out back, shoot it, and have levels that are as strange and mystical as Sonic himself is. Let me put it this way. Both of these levels tell their own stories. Their visuals offer more than enough to tell you a story without even saying a word. There's clearly thought and care put into each of them, and it'd be rude and, frankly, incorrect to say that either of these stages are uninteresting. The only difference is that this level is a short story, and this one's a novel. I'm not good at analogies, I hope you get what I'm trying to say. Now, I do want to point out two 3D games in particular that try to replicate the surrealism, at least somewhat, of the classics. Sonic Heroes and Sonic Colors. Sonic Heroes is probably the most vibrant 3D game with saturated colors and more abstract environments. It looks very nice. The level themes for the most part are also more unique. They'd fit in right there with the classic Sonic stage themes. However, for me, Colors takes the cake as the most surreal a modern game has ever gotten. This game is absolutely beautiful, and I really think it's my favorite looking 3D Sonic game ever. And this was released on the Wii. The choice to make the game take place on a bunch of different planets paid off in the end as it let the environments get really surreal. Every single stage in this game is absolutely gorgeous, and I feel those same emotions I felt with the classics. Tropical Resort is an early peak for this game's visuals, not that the rest of the planets aren't beautiful, they absolutely are. However, Tropical Resort stole my heart. The architecture of this place is so intriguing to me. There's so many different patterns on the floors and the wall, keeping every second of these stages feeling refreshing visually. There's so many different signs coming in, all different shapes and sizes, and fonts and all that. It's such a full environment, if that makes sense. While Tropical Resort isn't the only stage like this, it feels so full, yet it doesn't feel like cluttered at all. There's so many different things here. Gates, signs, multiple attractions like Ferris wheels and what have you, palm trees, streetlights, there's so much here, yet none of it feels unnecessary. And the cherry on top of all of it is the constant backdrop of space with a visible Earth nearly 24/7. I love this so much. I just wish they wouldn't create locales like this without needing to go to space for them. A stage like Sweet Mountain, it feels like they'd never make a locale on Earth in a modern Sonic game, but in a classic game, I could see this just being another stage. It feels like they're too scared to get too abstract or different with the locales on Earth, so we don't get many truly surreal locations anymore. Give us more locales like this on Earth, it can work. Trust me. At the end of the day, while 3D Sonic games often look nice, they're missing that extra thing that makes them stand out, makes them truly memorable, makes me actually feel something for them. I feel like there's simply a level of surrealism we're never going to reach in 3D because, to be honest, I'm not sure if it can be replicated outside of pixel art, but damn it, I know we can at least get close. I'm not sure if I'm alone on this, or if you guys even fully understand what I mean. For all I know, I've just been spewing a bunch of incoherent babble, but I hope at least a few of you at least understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not good at art or describing art, you know, I don't really know the proper way to articulate a lot of the stuff, so there's probably better ways to word the feelings that I'm, you know, feeling, but I don't really know how, so I just kind of hope you guys get what I mean with all this. I hope Frontiers 2 at least tries to give us some locales on par with Colors. I feel like it's warranted, and I feel like this series would be better if it returned to its roots when it came to the visual identity, and maybe a couple other things. If you enjoyed this video, I appreciate you for making it this far. I really do. Subscribe to the channel for more, and join my Patreon if you want to go the extra mile. I'll see you all next time. Peace.